So this is an example of a girl who likes to shit test. Now, granted, with the first message I sent her, I sort of set up that frame of very feisty back and forth, but this also is definitely a girl based on my interaction here and then my interaction with her later on the phone, who just really likes that. She likes that banter. She likes that like I'm cooler, you're cooler, I'm witty, you're witty, that kind of thing. So here's how you deal with a girl like that. And here's how you deal with also turning around a pretty non-positive beginning to a messaging scenario. So my first message to this girl was, let's fuck like minks, raise rugrats, and live happily ever after. As I mentioned in the section on the first message, this is a copy and paste message that I've used before. It gets a very varied sort of range of responses. You can get some really, really positive responses, like, ha, that's so funny, that kind of stuff, or let's do it. But it can also get some really negative responses, like, that's offensive, fuck you, those kind of things too. So it's definitely a polarizing message. In this case, it got kind of an interesting response, and her response was, no thanks, period. She even included the period for finality, so I appreciate that. It's good on her part. But not obviously the most positive response you can get, and not very encouraging. So how do you deal with a shit test like this? Well, you have a few options to deal with any shit test. First of all, in a live interaction, one way to deal with a shit test is just like be quiet or change the subject. That doesn't tend to work as well online because it's not as organic. It tends to be a little like forced and try hard. Or sometimes if you do silence, you're just not doing enough. You just never get a response. So the two other ways to pass a shit test are misinterpret, meaning treat it as a compliment, or agree and exaggerate, meaning go along with it. Take it to a logical extreme so that she can know that you can't possibly be serious. No one would actually say that in seriousness, okay? So in this case, I decided to misinterpret. I decided to treat it as a compliment. Or I decided actually not even to treat it as a compliment. I decided to intentionally misunderstand what she was saying. So she said, no thanks. So I said, okay, forget the Rugrats, and I'll be sure the sex is terrible, but happily ever after is non-negotiable. So again, she's saying no thanks and no thanks to you, as in I'm not interested. And then what I misinterpreted as, instead of that, she's saying no thanks to that particular proposal. So I changed the proposal up a little bit. Now, what I didn't know at the time, the first message was actually, I'd looked up opening lines from movies, but I didn't know what movie it was from. I just knew it was like a pickup line from a movie. And it was actually from the movie Basic Instinct. And in the actual movie, the way it went is the guy said the line, the girl said, not a fan of Rugrats. And then the guy said something like, okay, forget the Rugrats. Or said, let's fuck like minks, forget the Rugrats and live happily ever after, which is eerily similar to my response. So either I have no originality or I'm as clever as a Hollywood writer, one or the other, I'm not sure. But the point is, I came up with this response that was very similar to what happened in the movie. So her next response, and this is a very tough shit test, is, yawn, I see you are a collector of quotes. So she's basically calling me out on plagiarizing. So here she's clearly giving me a very logical shit test. She's saying, look, you just stole this line from a movie. Can you come up with anything original? Who the fuck are you? I'm bored. Like, do better, right? So pretty big shit test. And I don't want to like try and qualify by just being like, oh no, I can do better. I can win you over, princess. Because again, that puts me in the lower value frame. That puts me in the frame that I'm trying to sell myself to her as opposed to being the selective man. You always want to maintain your frame, maintain your ability to be the selector and have her selling herself to you. So I don't want to lose that. So what I did is I did what we call a reframe. Okay, this is another way to get out of a situation or pass a shit test. It's a much harder one to do, but it can be very, very powerful. And a reframe basically is you change the meaning of something by changing the context through which it is viewed. Okay, so in this case, her frame of the interaction is, you're copy and pasting to me, this is lame. Now I'm going to misinterpret the frame and create a new frame, and here's how I did it. I said, haha, I love the idea that you Googled my messages. I suppose that in spite of your cliche-filled profile, your wit is sufficient to merit a handwritten email. Okay, now this is pretty confrontational, a little bit ballsy, etc., but it does a lot of really good things. So let's break it down bit by bit. Haha, I love the idea that you Googled my messages. This is awesome. This is so, so key because her whole frame is, you're lame because you are copy and pasting me shit from movies. Now, what could possibly be lamer than that? Well, I'll tell you what could be lamer than that. The thing that would be lamer is you're so intrigued and aroused by this guy who's copy and pasting to you that you Googled and found out that that was from a movie and then called him out on it, right? So the fact that she Googled means she's essentially into me. So I'm calling that out. I'm basically reframing instead of me being the lame one, she's now the lame one. So I'm already putting her on the defensive. Again, I'm the one screening, she's the one chasing. I'm the one deciding whether to buy or not, rather than the one that's selling. Okay, so haha, I love the idea that you Googled my messages. Then I really hammer it home and give her a shit test back. Say, I suppose in spite of your cliche-filled profile, your wit is sufficient to merit a handwritten email. And by the way, the handwritten email is the one I just wrote, right? So it's like a self-referential, like witty. And the great thing that I told you in passing a shit test is just pass the shit test. I don't say a handwritten email and then like write some other shit after it. Or say, ask her a few questions like, how was your weekend? Some shit like that, okay? When you pass a shit test well, just trust that it's good enough and trust that you actually want her to have trouble answering it. You want it to be a little bit like, a little bit hard to work with, because that's going to create investment on her part. The more she has to think about the answer, like if you pass a shit test well, she's going to feel like she needs to validate herself. She's going to feel like she needs to prove herself. And she's also going to hopefully recognize that what you said was really witty and be intrigued. So given all that, she's going to want to message back. And the harder it is to message back, the more she has to invest, the more she's going to get all like caught up in the interaction, the more she's going to sort of start to fall in love with you. So you want to give her that opportunity. So that was my message in this case. And her response was, my profile may be cliche, but it got your attention, so I must be doing something right. Does he have a name? And this is absolutely awesome, right? So she's accepted my frame, right? The frame was she has to prove herself to me, and now she's accepting it. She said, well, my profile may be cliche, but it got your attention, as in my profile succeeded because it got your attention, as in I'm trying to sell myself to you and I've succeeded, right? So now I've changed it. I've changed it from a situation where I have to prove myself to her to now a situation where she has to prove herself to me, and she's gone along with that. So now the ball's in my court. I have all the power. And then on the end of it, does he have a name? She's saying one of two things. Quite possibly she's saying, I want to get to know you, what's your name, directly, but probably she's also a little worried that she's lost my attention or that I'm not as intrigued by her. So by asking a question, she wants to make sure that I respond. She wants to make sure she doesn't get silent. So now she's very insecure, she's very chasing. So I'm in a really good spot here. So my next response was, it's Todd. Perhaps we should continue this banter over a drink. Now again, now that she's given me a positive, I'm going to do a soft close. Now I'm not doing a hard close. I'm not saying let's get a drink on Tuesday at XYZ place, whatever. But I am putting it out there, the idea that we could close. And why do I think this is an okay place? Even though I've gotten shit tests, they're sort of flirty shit tests, and she's qualifying herself really hard. She's trying really hard to prove herself in the last email. So I think it's a pretty good spot. So I'm going to go for the soft close. So I answer her question briefly, get past the logical part, deal with it. Don't just ignore it because that's like dismissive, and even that's a little try hard or a little weird. So just answer it quickly. It's Todd. Perhaps we should continue this banter over a drink. A little bit strong, but I think appropriate in this case. Her response, perhaps we should. Oh, sorry. Her response, you don't sound like a Todd, and you certainly don't look like a Todd. Perhaps we should. Okay? So positive again, right? I don't know what sounding or looking like a Todd is, but it's another interesting opinion. She's giving thought to me. She's investing time in me. She's getting in her own head and overthinking things, which is good. And then perhaps we should, obviously, is very positive. She's tentatively agreeing to a drink. So now the next thing I want to do is start to solidify the plans. So the next message is, sounds good. My number is what's yours, Todd. Okay? Now this is very interesting. The my number is this, what's yours. This is a little gimmick I found out online that works really, really well. If I just say what's your number, I'll get a certain percentage response rates. If I say my number is this, what's yours, I'll get a much higher percentage of response rates. It's just a little thing, but I think what it does is it establishes trust. It lets her know that like you're willing to give rather than just asking. Right? And so it makes it far ruder for her to say no. And also the idea is like if someone's trusting you, we want to reciprocate. We want to like trust them back. So for whatever reason, I've just found this works much, much better. So that's my typical close is my number is this, what's yours, as opposed to what's your number. It's a little thing, but it's good. And again, I prefer to get them on the phone so I can talk and set the date up on the phone because I want solid dates and I have so much abundance that I don't care about one or two falling through the cracks. If you prefer to set it up via text, go for it. If you don't care about the numbers falling through the cracks or flaking, you just want to get every possible girl out, then by all means you can go that route as well. Although I do find that I get more girls out by using the phone as well. It's just a useful tool. And so in this case, she then gives me her number and we're good to go from there. So that's the next message. So now you see how to turn around a shit test, how to turn around a very negative response, a very sort of non-committal reply. So we got both of those in here. We got the hard shit test and we got the non-committal reply. These are two of the things that most guys mess up. So now that you know them, you hopefully will not mess that up ever again.